Hi guys, this is a little demo of dividing fractions and decimals. This is for Learning Target 2 on the upcoming Chapter 7 exam. And I just wanted to go over our methods of dividing fractions and decimals. So let's start with our first method, which we've been doing for a while, which is diagrams. This is most useful when the first number is a whole number. If it's not, it gets a little tricky, and I would recommend one of the other methods. I've noticed that a lot of people like to use circles, but you choose the whole number, you use that as the number of circles that you create, and then you split them into whatever the denominator of the fraction says. So in this case, I'm splitting it into thirds, and the numerator tells me how groups that I'm counting. So how many am I looking for in each group? And this is just a very straightforward one. I'm counting every single one of the pieces. If that said 2/3, I would count every 2 pieces as one, but this one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 4 divided by 1/3 equals 12. Alright, so our next method that we chose was the common denominator method. And we found that this is useful in a lot of scenarios, and this is actually what I'm going to recommend in a little bit for the decimal division. But we want both denominators to be the same, so that when we divide and we divide straight across, we're going to end up with a 1 in the denominator. So that would mean I need to multiply my 1/2 by 4/4. I would get 4/8. And now I'm doing 4/8 divided by 1/8. And when I divide, I can just go straight across. 4 divided by 1 is equal to 4, and 8 divided by 8 is equal to 1, and I get my answer of 4. Now this next method tends to be the least popular, so if you don't like it, then that's okay. But if you do like it, that's really awesome. I'm proud of you. This is the divide then multiply method, and the divide happens when we first divide by the numerator of the second fraction. There was a really cool diagram that I saw in class that I want to share with you, and this group had found 3/4, and to divide it in 2, they literally, well, I didn't really do that very well. Let me try again. They literally cut it in half. And if you cut it in half and were to remove half of it, you would be left with 3 pieces. And the pieces would no longer be 1/4 in size, they'd be 1/8 in size. So 3/4 divided by 2 is 3/8. And then we multiply by the denominator, which would be times 3. And we would get 9/8 here. So if you like that method, great, go for it. If not, there's one last one, and this tends to be the most popular. I did throw a little bit of a trick in here. It's not that big of a deal, but I just chose a whole number instead of a fraction. And we should know by now that whole numbers are just fractions with a denominator of 1. But the supergiant 1 had us stack the fractions on top of each other and then multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. And what that does is it takes our denominator to 1, and so we can focus on what's happening upstairs on the top of our fraction. So we take the same denominator and put it up there. I don't know if you could hear my cat meow, but my cat just meowed at you. It has to be the same fraction in the numerator and denominator because that's what makes a supergiant 1. And then from here we can multiply straight across and we would get 5/12. And then this denominator of 1 isn't really useful, so we are left with 5/12. So those are our 4 methods for dividing fractions. And I wanted to use those to remind you about dividing decimals. Dividing decimals, my recommendation truly is the common denominator method. Why divide decimals when we can divide fractions and we're good at dividing fractions? So I have 3/10 divided by 6/100. I would need to change this first denominator, and I would get 30 hundredths divided by 6 hundredths. And if I divide straight across, I'm going to get 5 over 1, which is 5. Now, there is a method that you can divide, and you can have, the first number on the inside and the second number on the outside, and then move the decimal sometimes, and then how many times you move it. And if you like that method and you know that, great. If not, don't worry about it. I really think that dividing decimals by dividing fractions is one of the best ways to go. So I'm just going to do one more example for you. I don't know. I just like this one. Oh, this one I think is from your study guide. So hopefully this will be helpful if you got stuck on it. 84 hundredths divided by, and this right here, I'm just going to switch it to a mixed number, 2 1/10. And then if I turn that into a fraction greater than 1, 10 times 2 is 20, plus 1 is 21 tenths. And this time, I need to turn this one into 100. So 84 hundredths divided by 210 hundredths would give me 84 divided by 210. Now, I would expect if the original question is in decimal form, your answer should be in decimal form. And at this point in time, this is something we should be able to do with our long division skills. So I'll remind you, just in case you don't remember, the numerator goes on the inside and the denominator goes on the outside. It doesn't matter which one is bigger. The numerator has to go on the inside, the denominator has to go on the outside. If I'm splitting 84 pieces of licorice between 210 people, no one gets a full piece of licorice. I just don't have enough. So I need to split everything into tenths. And if I do, I now have 840 tenths, and everyone would end up getting 4 of those tenths. So that would use all 840 tenths. I would have no leftovers, and everyone would get 4 tenths. So I just wanted to remind you of the decimal division and the long division to get us to decimals. And if you want more problems, I highly recommend creating your own. I have a little bit of advice for creating your own problems. In order to make sure that they are challenging enough to prepare you for the test, use a mixture of fractions, decimals, and percents. At this point in time, we should be comfortable going between all 3 of these without an issue. So if I said 30% divided by 8 tenths, I would expect you to be able to convert that into matching forms before you divided. So that's something that I would recommend doing. And this, I know it looks kind of funny, but it says be sure to sprinkle in mixed numbers, whole numbers, and fractions greater than 1. So those are all ways that I can kind of throw a little curveball at you. But I think we have an example of almost all of that in here, so you should be good to go. All right, well, that's all I have for this learning target. Good luck. If you have any questions, please come see me in office hours. And if not, I'll see you during the test.